Well, thank you all for being here this morning and for getting up at this hour. It's always great to see you, and I think the Chamber, I want to thank them as well for providing this forum for the candidates to come together. My name is Rob Gelder. I was elected Kitsap County Commissioner last November to complete an unexpired term. I have 20 years of experience in the health and human services industry, with 10 years in executive management or senior leadership, most recently with Martha and Mary in Paulsbo. Prior to joining the Board of County Commissioners, I was a member of the Kitsap County Citizens Budget Advisory Committee and on the 2011 Budget Panel. I am an active member of the Paulsbo North Kitsap Rotary Club, was the 2005 Community Builder Award recipient from the Paulsbo Chamber of Commerce, and I'm a member of the first class of 40 Under 40 for Kitsap. Now, I think as Commissioner, it's important that we are involved in our community side by side with our neighbors to make a difference and keep Kitsap great. Now, my priorities over the next 4 years include consolidating services with other jurisdictions to achieve economies of scale, continuing to simplify the permit and land use process through the use of technology and process improvement, and support job growth by supporting small businesses from a wide variety of sectors and being involved in economic development activities. Now, not all the improvements the county needs to make are a resource issue. We need to look at both processes and people, and that includes using technology to bring county services to the fingertips of our residents from the comfort of their own home. Now, leadership is not just about identifying problems, but it's about finding solutions. And leadership is not just about driving your own agenda, but about removing barriers so that the communities can realize their own. Now, my career and life experience has instilled in me a strong sense of public service. I bring a common sense, balanced approach to the office, and I look forward to your support to continue as County Commissioner. And I look forward to your questions this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, thank you and good morning. We've seen so many faces. It's good to see our friends and family here. This morning on our way in, Jessica and I, we had the wonderful excitement of waking up Julia and saying, guess what, this morning we're going to go have eggs and issues, and you have an opportunity for a civic moment. And so she was not very excited at first, but the idea of not having to endure my breakfast and my cooking, I think that fixed the problem. For those of you who don't know, my name is Chris Tibbs. I had the pleasure of running for County Commissioner last year as the Republican nominee. And I bring, I think, a unique number of qualifications to the role of County Commissioner. First and foremost, as a business owner, I've worked with governments to make my business profitable, of course, and worked with governments when they worked against making my business profitable. I currently have a bar supply company based in Seattle, Washington. We have a number of customers, including Azteca, but other restaurants throughout the I-5 corridor. Last year, we had a lot of debates and discussions about priorities of government. I'd like to serve as your county commissioner because I believe we have to have an independent performance audit, for Kitsap County. I like the City of Bremerton model. I think that makes a lot of sense, having an independent performance auditor. I think that we have to prioritize our county budget. I think oftentimes we spend money before we realize where we need to spend that money. And the first dollar of taxation, I believe, should come in or should go towards law and justice, not the last 10 cents. I think we have to restore customer service. I don't need to be critical, but oftentimes I think that, look at Kitsap County, and this is maybe a cheap shot, but where else do you receive 4 days of service for 7 days of taxation? You know, we've had a commission, we've had people who said, you know, we've cut during the lean times, and things are getting better. But right now, with our economy coming back and our budget coming back in, I want to make sure we make long-term planning decisions that make sense for Kitsap County, make sense for the people of Kitsap County. So I think that I am uniquely qualified. Very quickly, I'll tell you, many years ago I had a failed business. I got through that. You see, I stand up when I have an issue that brings me down. I move forward and I accomplish moving forward and getting better. You know, we can talk about, at one point in my life, living with a single mother, having a one-income family as a child. I had to make a difficult decision where I stepped aside and I dropped out of high school at a very young age. It's a decision that at this point in my life I regret, but at that point I didn't have a choice. I was the breadwinner for my family. And today my mother lives in a house I provide for her. My mother, whom I love, and I take care of is important to me. And I want to say that, you know, I think that what you want in the county commissioner is someone who will fight for you, who has endured tough times, who has endured difficulties, and has become better for it. So with that, my name is Tibbs. We had a very close election last year, and I hope that we have a wonderful discussion and dialogue today.
Thank you, Chris. And so now we move on to our question and answer period. These all questions are from our audience members, and we have quite a diversity of questions. I commend the audience for this morning's selection. I had difficulty even grouping them, so this is really going to be an exciting period of time. So let me begin. I'm going to give you start sheet, just give you a warm-up, and this is the only warm-up you're getting. And the questions, we'll start with Chris, since we started with Rob for introductory remarks. Chris, what are the two most pressing issues that the county commissioners have to deal with in the next 2 years?
Well, that's a great question. What are the two most pressing issues? You know, to me, I think it's being responsible and being responsive with the county budget. I know we say that again and again and again, and we keep hammering that issue. But I strongly believe that until we instill an independent performance audit, and we have performance audits for Kitsap County along with priorities of government, we're not going to get there. And I don't think you have a strong budget process by having the department directors and the various elected officials make those determinations. You know, going back to our economy, we have to get ahead of the curve here and work to become a business-friendly county government for Kitsap County. And that means we need to take serious leadership working with the Port of Bremerton, with the South Kitsap industrial area. We have to make serious inroads to have a stronger and more vibrant economy for Kitsap County. We have to have a 7-day work week. So the two priorities I see, the two most important issues, are sound budget policies and, of course, an economy. We have to get our economy back on track.
Thank you.
Thank you. You know, I agree with Chris. You know, there's a lot of things that we need to do when it comes to our budget, making sure that we put the policies in place that establishes a good, strong base for the economy. But I think that I would go a little bit step further in terms of what specifically the county can do in the Board of County Commissioners, is we need to look at our codes that we have in place so that we make sure that what we have actually supports businesses. One thing that we've learned over the past 5 years in the economic downturn, that there are a lot of people, if they lost their jobs, they were taking the businesses that they created in their garage and are actually going and becoming employers. And that's something we need to make sure that we are a help and not a hindrance. And additionally, I think the other pressing issue that may be facing the county, should a vote go forward in Silverdale incorporate, that is a huge impact on the resources to the county. So that could be a very pressing issue moving forward.
Very good, thank you. And same with you, Rob. Let's jump into property, shall we? First question is, do you consider mandatory setbacks to be an unfair taking of property?
You know, that is a great question, and I think one of the things when it comes to setbacks and regulations overall, one of the things that we do when we are a member or a part of our civil society is that we agree to some amount of limitations of our personal property, etc., and for the common good. Now, I think that a mandatory setback, which like the Shoreline Master Program says we have to operate and guide that process within the first 200 feet, that's a guideline, and what it ends up being, well, it still remains to be seen because we're in that process right now. Ultimately, I think that it's important that if there is a taking and it's demonstrated and it stands up to it, then property owners should be compensated for that.
Thank you.
Could you please repeat the question?
I would be happy to do so. Do you consider mandatory setbacks to be an unfair taking of property?
Yes, I do, and I absolutely do. I have to tell you that I think in a democracy, in a freedom-loving country that we have, property is one of the greatest assets we as individuals can attain or own or have. And I think the role of government is to protect individuals' property above all others when we can. And oftentimes, I think we look at the setbacks, you look at the proposals with the SMP, oftentimes our county commission and our policy making has been to err on the side of what is the common good. And I think that when you focus on the common good, oftentimes we lose individuality, we lose individual rights. So I think that you must be very judicious and very light-handed when we're talking about taking offsetting or setbacks. So I do see setbacks as a taking, and I think that people must be compensated for any property which you can take a term as a setback.
Thank you. All right, so staying on this topic is a question from an audience member who says, the county took away my rights to use about 60% of my property just to get a building permit to build a carport. What will you do to protect my property rights? Chris?
Well, I think it comes down to a philosophical difference. What I'm going to do is say, every time we have an issue, and in the land use capacity as a commissioner, set policies or make decisions, I think I have to weight land use decisions based on the rights and the legal rights of the individuals. I'm going to protect your rights before we take away or have these takings. You know, oftentimes what we see with building permits is you go in for a carport, and before you know it, you've had to have an additional permit, an additional permit, an additional permit. And I think that there's really some issues there that are wrong. In fact, moving away from property, but just to science, I have a very good friend who just opened a business up in Kingston. And he spent $100 for a sign and $300 for a sign permit up in Kingston. Because the county said, well, now we got to get the permit just right. He filled out his application. 40 days later, he got a sign permit through. So I think that we have to err on the side of caution and certainly protect individual property rights.
Thank you.
The challenge is that, I mean, that's a really great question. The nuances behind it, though, is that I think there's a backstory that we don't have as part of that question in terms of what is the topography of that parcel and in terms of the placement of that building. So it's difficult to say what is the geography. If you have a critical slope on your property that makes up a majority of that, then naturally you're not going to be able to build on that slope. So it's complex, but I think whenever possible, the commissioners support the Department of Community Development working with landowners to make sure that they can maximize the value and use of their property.
Okay, thank you. So Rob, staying with, I guess this issue comes down to, let's just take it over. Overall, there is a concern by an audience member that the building permit process and requirements are out of control. Will you review and eliminate any of these unnecessary infringements of our property rights? So let me take that, combine that with this one question, this other question. And the question just simply is whether it's property rights or overall regulatory. This issue gets to regulatory issues for our county. And the question then, in summary, is what is the one county regulation that you would change? If any, I guess I should add.
Again, it's a great question. There's a complex layer of issues here. I think ultimately when it comes to building permits and issuing those, we need to, as the Board of County Commissioners, look at the codes that we have in the various chapters of our titles in the county code. And that's one of the things that we are looking to move forward with. And I can say in general, when it comes to one of the next chapters that is coming for update in 2013 is Chapter 17. And a lot of that gets at businesses and land use of property. And one of the things that we need to do is, I think we really need to change our paradigm a little bit when we go to addressing codes. And what I mean by that is, right now if you look at the use table in that chapter, you're going to have a whole bunch of things that only the list of what you can do, and everything else is excluded. What we really need to get at is what is absolutely excluded, and then make everything else permitted.
Thank you. I know it's a difficult question, so please.
Well, going to county regulations and changes, I think we need to take a look. A couple of years back, we had a code revision committee come together in Kitsap County, comprised of various stakeholders in the community, and they had a lot of very good recommendations. I would like to see a revision for the codes in Kitsap County that really focus on allowing property owners to do more with their property, as opposed to focusing on GMA and focusing on the SMP. I understand we have to comply with the SMP and the GMA, but I think oftentimes we make it so onerous and so difficult to develop one's own property, and we lose something in that. And I think that oftentimes that's an illegal taking. So So for regulatory issues, for changing the regulations, I think one of the first things we can do for property is go in and say, let's make this work for you, the individual. How can we right-size our county for you? And how can we develop our policies for you so you can be more successful? In regards to that, so thank you.
And so speaking of property, let's move from personal property to a larger piece of property. Silverdale. That's a big piece of property. So the question is, from our audience member, is what impact would incorporation of Silverdale have on the citizens of Kitsap County? Let's go see you, Chris.
Well, the citizens as a whole, immediately we're not going to see, of course, any reduction in services. Ideally, in a perfect world, the city of Silverdale Incorporated, that revenue that's already going to Silverdale would already be offset, so there wouldn't be a complete loss of services countywide. But the reality is a large portion of our budget, in the county's budget, general fund, and taxes coming in benefit individuals in Kingston, Seebeck, and Holland. So we're looking at a very difficult choice, should Silverdale incorporate. I certainly don't favor it. I would, after all, argue that the retail corridor of our county truly is in Silverdale. And, you know, I live in Suquamish. I shop at the Kitsap Mall. Those sales tax should still continue to benefit us as a county and as a region. Unfortunately, should Silverdale incorporate, there's an opportunity to lose a significant portion of the county budget. Of course, we'll have some opportunities to reduce the county staff and such because of a transitionary period. But Silverdale incorporating is essentially one of the most crucial issues facing our county, and it'll be an interesting election to see what happens there.
Thank you.
I think in terms of the potential impact of the Silverdale incorporation on the citizens of Kitsap County, the initial projections are that if Silverdale incorporates, that would equate to approximately a 10% cut to the county's general fund. And that's something that you don't endure without some direct impacts to our ability to provide services to the community. Now, of course, there, as Mr. Tibbs was talking about, there's a potential that the new city could contract back for services, which might preserve some county jobs. But what it does is it shifts the revenues to that city away from the county. So what it could potentially do is impact the level of services that unincorporated Kitsap County receives. It could mean that the dollars for the sheriff's department shift, so therefore the response time might go down. So there's any number of rippling effects that could be an end result of incorporation.
Thank you. And staying on the same topic, and this audience member wants you all to actually get a little bit more specific, and that is what's currently being provided specifically to Silverdale by the county, and how will incorporation affect those services, such as who is responsible for the services?
The unincorporated, the Silverdale urban growth area receives a level of services basically at an urban level. And so what happens there is that a portion of all of the revenues across the county, they're subsidized somewhat by the other residents of Kitsap County. The services specifically there, a lot of it is around law enforcement, law and justice. There will always be a portion of revenues that are generated by that city that will support general government, like the assessor, treasurer, auditor, etc. Those are regional services that the county provides and will be supported regardless. The direct impact will be the level of service we provide relative to roads. That'll be the biggest one, public works, sewers, septic, etc. And I think we've run out of time.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, and to echo what Rob's saying, you know, right now there's two levels of services Kitsap County provides to all residents in Kitsap County. There's two kinds of services. Essentially, there's unincorporated services, which are similar to city-like services, but not quite the city. So things like law and justice, planning, roads, and those kinds of issues. And then there's the regional services provided countywide, the coroner, the auditor, the assessor, elections. So right now, Kitsap County treats Silverdale by and large as if it were a city. So there's a sheriff's department that provides law and justice. We have roads, we have sewer. Planning is simply one of the largest issues. In fact, the supporters of incorporation, the largest issue they have right now with the county in regards to Silverdale incorporating really is planning. It comes down to the effective use of planning of their area of what Silverdale will be. So with that, my time has also run out.
Thank you. So let's move off the property and get onto the water, shall we? And this goes to ferries. Chris, the question to you is, there have been ferries canceled this year, and we, meaning apparently Kitsap County, just got a preliminary budget from the Washington State Ferries that would cut evening runs on Bremerton and southward. How would you help fix ferries for Kitsap?
Well, thank you. That's a very good question. When you consider Kitsap County has 4 of the largest ferry runs and depots here, from Kingston through to Bainbridge and Bremerton. Those are large, major runs of Kitsap County that affect us and affect our economy and our trade. I think as a county commissioner, we have to recognize that the ferries budget, by and large, is set in Olympia. It's set by the Washington State Department of Transportation and the state legislature. So what I can do is advocate on behalf of our county, and I'm working with our delegation of the 23rd, Republicans, our 23rd representatives, and our state representatives and state senators, to really focus on how we can get more funding for this necessary service. I view that ferries are an essential portion of state highways. I think that we have to maintain a strong and sound ferry system. And I think you do that by working with Olympia, working with our state legislators, and saying, this is how we're going to do it if we can, and I think that comes down to partnership.
Thank you.
Excellent question, because it is true, ferries are part of the marine highway. They are critical for our economic development, our commerce in the West Sound area. What we can do as the Board of County Commissioners is, yes, reach out to the 23rd, but beyond the 23rd, we need to reach out to the 35th and the 26th. We are covered by 3 legislative districts in Kitsap County. That means we have 9 individuals and advocates in the legislature that can work on our behalf, and we need to work and lobby with them. But beyond that, we really need to go, it's not just Kitsap that's affected. It's Jefferson, it's Mason, it's Clallam. There are a lot of communities that funnel through Kitsap to reach the Seattle corridor, I-5 corridor. So we really need to reach out to the other Board of County Commissioners and throughout the region to be that lobbying and advocacy force.
So staying with the question of the ferry service, then the question is, do you support the privatization of the Washington State Ferries? Rob?
That's an interesting question. I agree. Again, it will boil down to one of the questions that really falls to our legislators, because that would be something that they would grapple with. It's not an area that I have studied a whole bunch, so I would have to be honest in letting you know that's. I think it's one of those things we need to consider as part of the overall piece of it. But ultimately, when it looks at trying to maintain a ferry system that's affordable for users, there has to be a certain level of subsidy. You provide that as a private entity, you don't have the resources that are able to come to play. And again, getting back to the fact that ferries are part of our marine highway, it's the state's responsibility to help support that system.
Thank you. Chris?
I do support the privatization of the Washington State Ferries if we can. I think that it makes sense. There's a lot of metrics to having a private ferry service. In fact, if you'll recall, for many years, we had 2 large private ferry services up until the early 60s. Blackball being one, the last remnants, of course, being the Coho up in Victoria. But overall, we have to maintain this vital, crucial marine highway. And I think you do that by building partnerships, private-public partnerships oftentimes, in regards to what works and what doesn't work. The decision to privatize the Washington State Ferries would be done at the state level. We as the county could advocate in one direction or another, but that decision really is outside the purview of the commission. That being said, we have to recognize how crucial the Washington State Ferries are and the ferries are to our economy. I mean, if you look at Bremerton's redevelopment right now, and the redevelopment over the last 5 years in Bremerton, one of the largest issues has been the lack of an effective foot ferry.
Thank you. So let's move off of the ferries and get on to another slightly controversial subject. This one goes to you, Chris. The question is, what culpability does the county commissioners have in the outrageous persecution of the Kitsap Rifle and Revolver Club?
Well, thank you.
Folks, I just read them.
Thank you for the easy question.
It's your turn.
I think you'll see a divergence of opinion here between my opponent and I. I would say that I think the county has gone above and beyond what is reasonable to zone and to work with the Rifle Revolver Club. I think oftentimes our county has not acted in very critical of the county's performance in this regard. I think that there is a significant amount of culpability. And I think when you look at the two separate issues there, and when you look at the KRCC, there are two separate issues going through the prosecuting attorney's office right now. There's the criminal issue with Marcus Carter, which I think is fundamentally wrong. I think is fundamentally flawed. And personally, I find offensive the conduct of our prosecuting attorney in regards to Marcus Carter. And then we have the civil aspect, where our commission has gone out and through disagreements and through a differing of opinions, the county feels that the gun club has done far more than it should with its land use. And of course, the gun club feels it's done just right. I think that we need to look at that case again with fresh eyes. I think we need to look at how we can have a cohesive, positive relationship with kids at Rock Revolver Club.
Thank you. Rob?
Well, let me start out by saying that I believe the Kitsap Rifle and Revolver Club does play an important role in our community for recreational shooters. And that's not the issue here. The issue is a court case that began before I joined the Board of County Commissioners. And I think ultimately what it boils down to is, yes, it's land use, and there are codes in place, and the county and the Board of County Commissioners is held to the responsibility of upholding and advocating for those codes and the fulfillment of that. So that being said, that's difficult. It ultimately goes to becoming the purview of the prosecuting attorney's office. But I think it is our role to hold people responsible. And I think that we need to work with KRRC to really kind of come up with how do we move forward from here.
Thank you.
Can I have just a few moments for a follow-up?
We'll grant the same amount of time to your opponent.
Very quickly, this is a point where I disagree with my opponent. The civil case between the board, or the main case right now in litigation, was a decision by the Board of County Commissioners. The prosecuting attorney has a considerable amount of authority when it comes to criminal cases. Now he is persecuting the election, or the civil case. He does not have the same authority. If the commission chose, they could find peace and a settlement at a reasonable peace with the gun club. The county commissioners do have the legal authority under the statute, chapter 36 of the RCW, to go out and to settle the case with the gun club. The commissioners also have the authority to work on zoning with the gun club. DCD has no authority to sue without the permission of the Board of County Commissioners. And just as I, as a private citizen, could go out and sue someone, my attorney could not sue on my behalf. The prosecuting attorney sues on the behalf of the Board of Commissioners and with their permission.
Thank you. Rob, would you care to rebut?
Yeah, there's two issues at play. And I appreciate it that there's nuances and it's mincing words, but I think what Mr. Tibbs is meshing together is the fact that ultimately the Kitsap County Board of County Commissioners does not have the authority to bring suit. Only that resides with the prosecuting attorney. That is set by RCW. Those two do not mix. And ultimately, yes, when it comes to working out a resolution with KRRC, we've already expressed to them long ago that if they want to come as part of the initial stay from that suit, that the door is open. If they want to come to us and work through how do we find a solution to the zoning issue and the land use, the doors are open at DCD.
Thank you. Now you all got me confused on who gets the next question. So, So this takes us from guns and rifles down to roads. So why would a less expensive means of slowing traffic not have been more effective than the $700,000 approximately Lake Flora roundabout? For example, speed bumps or stop signs.
It's a great question. I would love to say that I'm a road engineer, but I'm not. That's not an expertise that I bring to the Board of County Commissioners. So we have to rely upon the experience and expertise of the engineers in our Roads Department of Public Works. So obviously, whenever they approach an issue and they analyze it, they go from soup to nuts and they figure out what the best solution and most cost-effective solution is. They're not in the business of spending money they don't need to. They're going to look at all of the issues that they possibly can to come up with the most cost-effective means of addressing the concern in that area.
Chris, could you repeat the question?
Why would a less expensive means of slowing traffic not have been more effective than the $700,000 approximately Lake Flora roundabout? For example, speed bumps or stop signs.
I think that's a valid question, an important question that we should ask our commission and to the roads department. I don't like it, and I don't feel comfortable when our commissioners or elected officials say, well, staff said or made this recommendation. The staff makes recommendations, the commissioners set the policy and say you have permission to do this. A large portion of the money for Lake Flora, of course, was grant funding, but nonetheless, there is no need, I think the average citizen can say, to have a roundabout, a rural roundabout in the middle of nowhere at a huge cost to our taxpayers. And there seems to be a move towards this in Kitsap County, and part of our planning has gone towards more and more roundabouts. Every day I drive through the Lincoln, off of Lincoln on my way to work, and I go by a roundabout the city of Paulsville is building with the partnership of the county. I think that oftentimes we can solve the problem with a sign, with a bump, with a speed bump, and I think that we need to find more positive solutions than going out and reinventing the wheel.
So now moving on from roads to the economy. So let's start off just simply. What have you done specifically to develop private sector jobs? Chris.
Well, that's a great question. A lot. In fact, this year has been a very eventful year for me. Over the last 2 years, I've been building my business at Partners. We decided to buy the Partners out in January. I have a very successful water supply company. I make six employees. We have 3 drivers. We have sales reps that go out and talk to our customers. By and large, who cares about what it is I do? I sell 11,800 bar supplies and restaurant supplies to 34 area Aztecas and so many other restaurants. So I've done a lot to create an economy and building jobs. I actually have signed the front of a paycheck, as opposed to just endorsing the back of a paycheck, which oftentimes I think gives me a different and a more unique perspective when dealing with businesses. I can say, hey, look, I've been in your shoes. I've had to make my sales tax. I've had to pay these taxes. I've had to go through these government regulations. And I think that's why I can be an advocate for business and to say, what can I do to make sure the health department works with you and not against you, or whatever the government may be.
Thank you.
One of the things that I've done this year had the opportunity to convene a White House Business Council roundtable. And that was the process of bringing together, we held 2 of those, and we invited approximately 30 small business owners from South Kitsap and North Kitsap, together with representatives from the Small Business Administration and the Office of Advocacy. And really what that was about was beginning a dialogue as how can we identify what the issues are, what's working well, what's not working well in terms of regulation and access to credit. Those were some of the 2 themes that emerged from that conversation. The power of that was the fact that we could take that message directly back to the administration without having to try to find some congressional fix. And we know how well that works lately. But one of the things I think really it's about having that dialogue, and through that identifying what we can do locally as we move forward to addressing code issues and how those codes actually help or hinder our small businesses.
Thank you. So staying on that same topic, we have quite a few questions regarding the economy. This question is, with 10,000 people unemployed in Kitsap County, a notoriously inefficient DCD, and reputation for hostility to business, how and what should Kitsap County improve the local business climate?
You know, it was great to see, I think it was a week ago Sunday, in the letters to the editor in the Kitsap Sun. There was a letter from Jeff Coombe, who's a local developer, real estate person, and his comment in the headline was that Kitsap County is open for business. And I think that in itself says that we have begun to turn the corner. When this summer the Department of Community Development embarked on the Lean Process Improvement Program, we started off with the single-family home permitting process. And when we actually, as part of that, it was a multidisciplinary kind of group. There were people not just from DCD, but there were other folks from different departments in the county, along with the building community. And the power of that was that you had all of those stakeholders together to look at the process overall and try to hone it down. The developers that attended said they were looking for anything less than 30 days would be great. but we actually were able to drive that down. When the first implemented, the first day 9 permits came in, 4 went out the same day.
Thank you. Chris?
Well, I think that's the question a lot of us are asking. What are we going to do about the economy? 10,000 unemployed. We have to do better in Kitsap County. You know, what it comes down to is leadership, guidance, and moving our county forward. It's also trust with the business community that we oftentimes do not have in Kitsap County. You know, we rehash NASCAR, you look at NASCAR, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but there was a great opportunity that Kitsap County failed, and the city of Bremerton failed, and we could have done better. So going back to that, you know, I applaud the efforts of the current board, the DCD for moving forward with single occupancy permitting. I think it's phenomenal. They're moving in that direction. We still have a county government that's open 4 days a week. We still have a county government that could be a lot more receptive to public service and to private investors. And we have to make quick inroads here. You know, we don't take advantage, fully use or exercise the South Kitsap industrial area the way we should. We have 12 Trees Business Park up in Paulsbo, which is an industrial business park that has no effect. With that, I'm going to submit.
Thank you. And staying with this question is, with approximately 40% of our jobs coming directly from the other Washington, I presume that's across the water, and the Bedland that's so related, do you see a need to diversify our economy, and if so, how would you go about doing that? Chris?
Well, I think that's a great question. I know Rob and I disagree fundamentally about the future of the economy. I favor more of a manufacturing based on the economy. I think Rob has a different opinion on what the economy for Kitsap County should be moving forward. I do not believe, in past debates we talked about it, you know, the U.S. Navy is $1.6 billion of the Kitsap County economy. That's a number from the Navy. In past discussions, the number for tourism, for instance, has been between 1.4 and 1.6 million. At one point, I heard it discussed that regional tourism represents $10 billion of the Kitsap County economy. And I'd like to know what that regional tourism is. I think we can, by and large, agree what we both want. And what I see as a necessity is we have to have jobs that a man or a woman can have, make a fair wage, make an appropriate wage, have a wage that allows them to have a family, have a home, to be able to enjoy what it is in the life in Kitsap County. So with that, I'm going to...
Thank you.
Yes, there is the Navy plays a huge part in our local economy. I think we can all agree to that. And we do need to diversify. And manufacturing is part of it, but we can't just put all our eggs in one basket. If any of us who lived in the Puget Sound region, when the dot-com bubble burst at the end of the 90s, when we had so many eggs in that one basket, that was just had a rippling effect on our local economy. So what we need to do is make sure that we diversify, and we do that by supporting small businesses, having the codes in place to make sure that happens. Mr. Tibbs talks about that we're only open 4 days a week. When you really look at it, a majority of the county is open 5 or more days a week. When you look at law and justice in the sheriff's office, that's a 24/7 operation. The court system, they're open 5 days a week. Public Works is serving our community 5 days, actually 7 days a week, depending on how things go. And 12 Trees is a great idea because they went in as a master plan, and so they can expand for businesses as the demand requires.
Thank you. And this is somewhat a follow-up question from one of our audience members who maybe from other debates. And the question simply is, there's been discussion about 10 billion green tourist jobs and also 1.5 billion military input to the county. Where do these figures come from? Rob?
10 billion jobs for tourism. I think that fact was actually turned around. It was 10 billion was the amount of sales generated through tourism, and it actually in the Puget Sound region equates to 130,000 jobs. The Kitsap Peninsula Visitors Bureau has actually identified the fact that what that job is locally is 500 million in sales and 6,700 jobs. So I think that figure was a little bit reversed.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, very quickly, I didn't know what the $10 billion was, much like many of the people in this room. So thank you for answering the question. I think we know that we in Kitsap County are dependent on the United States Navy, $1.6 billion of our economy. And if we don't have a smart growth, smart plan for economic development in Kitsap County, and we start being more aggressive about encouraging growth in Kitsap County, we're going to have a real difficult time. You know, I have a concern with many projects in North Kitsap where we're taking land off the tax rolls, we're moving land into protective status, we're not developing property or developing opportunities for business to develop and thereby having jobs that people can have and enjoy not only living in Kitsap County but working in Kitsap County.
Thank you, Chris. So this question is, again, staying with the economy, how do you propose to bring industrial and manufacturing jobs to Kitsap? Chris?
That's a great question. And I'll tell you, I think what we need to do right away is come together and do more than just talk. Oftentimes we bring the stakeholders together. We have KEDA, the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance. We have KEDA, the Kitsap Aerospace Defense Association. We have many talking points and talking groups. Let's do something. Let's bring people to Kitsap County. I think we've had enough discussion about the planning. I think we have a pretty good idea of the broad strokes. Let's have jobs come to Kitsap County. And what I think you need to do is things like demonstrate that. I'll give you an example. Recently, the Port of Bremerton requested monies from the Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council for $2 million for phase 2 of 3 of a connecting road. The port wants to build a road in the middle of a large industrial area so you can access it, and by access to that port property, we can go ahead and build warehouses or manufacturing facilities or distribution warehouses. The county chose instead, through the KRCC, to transfer that money that should have gone to the port, that was waited for the port, to the Buckland Hill project, which is more than $12 to $16 million, and at this time is still not fully funded.
Thank you,
Just
Chris.
to touch base on the $2 million for the Cross-Skia connector, that actually the port, it's not just the county that makes that decision, that is all of the county, the cities, and it includes the Port of Bremerton. So they were part of that decision-making process and ranking the priorities that were submitted for that funding. So when it comes to bringing more manufacturing and industrial jobs to Kitsap County, we are doing that, and we are active. It's more than just lip service, because we are, as a local area, investing in the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance. And by doing that investment, they are the ones that are actively reaching out, working in the community and other communities to bring people in. That is their primary role. They are the economic development agency for Kitsap County and its local jurisdictions. So they're reaching out, they're bringing people, showing them the capacity that Kitsap County has to support their business and help them relocate.
So now, from a different angle on economic development, the question is, how do quality of life improvements like parks help economic development in Kitsap County? Rob?
You know, that's a great question as well, because when we think about economic development, it's not just about in jobs. It's not just about having the land available for the building to go up and the business to operate. We really need to see about overall, what is it that brings people here? What is it that makes a business want to relocate to Kitsap? What actually is one of those enticements that is going to help them recruit and retain that qualified workforce? And it is quality of life, and that means investing in our local community. It means investing in parks. It means investing in land acquisition. If this is the opportunity when right now, here and now, we can actually acquire land at a very cheap rate that actually right now is not paying very much in taxes. Probably all of the 7,000 acres in North Kitsap only bring in about $25,000 in tax revenues. So that's minuscule when you think about it. So we're not really going to see a huge tax shift, but it is about investing in the long term for quality of life and bringing business to Kitsap.
Thank you. Chris?
It's a great question. I would go back to that $25,000 and say, well, how important is $25,000 to the Kitsap County Coroner's Office? You know, Greg Sandstrom has had his budget cut time and time again. I know money's coming back this budget cycle, but $25,000 is a heck of a lot of money to our elected officials when they're managing significant portions of our county government. Is purchasing the Bay and Forest Initiative more than 7,000 acres in North Kitsap? I think that question really comes to this. You know, there's a proposal right now from Kitsap County to maybe participate. Certainly Kitsap County is championing the transfer of 7,000 acres of the Bay and Forest Initiative up in North Kitsap. You know, from Pope, a private owner, a private developer who's owned the land for more than 100 years. I have significant concerns of the county participating in any financial aspect. of a deal with Poe to transfer that land or move that land. I know we're working through that project. The project has not come to completion. But with that, I think parks are nice. I think police are necessary.
Thank you. So, as next question gets into just simply regarding budgets and finance, and the question is broad-based. And for you, Chris, the question is, what is your experience with budgets?
Well, thank you. I have a lot of experience with budgets as far as my own personal budgets and my business budget. But in 2008, I had the opportunity to serve as the vice chair of the Kitsap County Budget Committee. It was a 13-person committee formed by the Board of County Commissioners at that time. I served with my opponent, Rob Gelder. The committee elected me to the position of vice chair, and working with the committee, I helped to draft the bylaws. We had a lot of experience. For 1 year, I served as vice chair. During that time, I worked with various elected and appointed department heads to go through the budget process. And what I saw at the time, and I still believe to be the problem, is that we do not have an independent performance auditor. You know, I think oftentimes we in Kitsap County, in the county government, choose to spend money because they have it. I think we have to stop and have an independent performance audit to look at each and every department and see what works, what doesn't work. You know, Kitsap County had a county auditor. I was surprised to know that the county auditor has a CAFR, comprehensive annual financial report, that is truly the closer. I mean, it says what the monies were actually spent on, but it doesn't actually audit the county. Thank you.
So in terms of the budget experience, I've been involved with the county budget now for about 5 years, both as a citizen representative on the Citizen Budget Advisory Committee, serving on the budget panel, and 2 years now as a county commissioner. So, and Mr. Tibbs was involved, and he left after a year. He didn't stick it out. So I think that what really it boils down to is we need to stay involved. We need to understand the issues. We need to be able to peel away the layers a little bit more. And when it comes to overall, even prior to the Board of County Commissioners and working there with the county on behalf of the citizens here, I have been involved with organizations and nonprofits are businesses. They make payroll, they raise money in a very different way. It's not necessarily in providing services, but I've also raised millions of dollars to help services be provided to the community. So I understand about budgets and making payroll.
Thank you.
I'd like just a rebuttal if I could.
We're going to hold on that. Thank you. So next question is, this combines some of the issues we had before regarding employment and business and budgets, and also diversity. So the question of the economy. So what will be your approach to increasing business employment so that we are not so dependent on government employment?
I think there's similarities with this question from other ones in the past, so forgive me if I'm just reiterating what I've said before. I think what we do as Kitsap County government to help support diversity of job creation is that we need to make sure that we go back to our codes as we develop them to make sure that we have things in place to support those various businesses. And I'll give you an example. One of those is home-based businesses. We need to make sure that we address the code for home-based businesses because so many people have, as I said before, they have actually been developing a hobby business out of their garage that's blossoming. And how do we make sure that we can support them so that they can be successful, start hiring employees as their business grows? And codes are the county's key to doing that.
Thank you. Chris, would you please read the question again?
Sure.
Thank you.
What will be your approach to increasing business employment so that we are not so dependent on government employment?
I think we have to think outside the box. I think we have to come back and find consensus with other business owners. I think opportunities like KEDA and KEDA can be an opportunity for discussion. I don't think it's a great place to start the conversation, though. I think that we have to work and recognize that home-based businesses are important, but certainly aren't the be-all and end-all to our county's economy. Look at organic farming, you look at other opportunities for businesses. Those aren't going to be the growth-generating employees that we need to have. Going back to the last question very quickly, I didn't just quit the Budget Committee. When I started on the Budget Committee, we didn't have a term. In fact, the Budget Committee recommended to the Board of County Commissioners what the term would be. So as a matter of point, I'd simply like to say that I served my term for 1 year. I would not serve as a rubber stamp, which oftentimes was the case of the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee chose to rubber stamp many of the County Commission's initiatives without any discussion of the issues.
Thank you. And I appreciate you being able to answer all the questions in 1 minute. That's very good. So, moving on to an interesting question. And this is to you, Chris. There is a Kitsap scenario where elected leaders quit before serving full term. Will you commit to serve full term? Chris?
Yes, I will. I promise if elected, I will serve a full term. And I know a number of people in this room don't want to believe this is an issue, but it is. For 38 straight years, each and every North Kitsap County Commissioner, I'm not attacking my opponent, each and every North Kitsap County Commissioner has begun their term with a resignation and appointment. John Horsley resigns so Chris Andreessen could be appointed. Chris Andreessen lost the election to Matt Ryan, so there was one exception where there was an elected official that was a Republican. From that point on, Chris Andreessen resigned for Steve Bauer. Steve Bauer resigned for Rob Gelder. There is a problem in North Kitsap when you look at our state senatorial race, when you look at our state house seats, where we have a number of resignations. And I've heard time and time again that this is indicative of the state, and if we were a more Republican county over in Eastern Washington, this would be the same case. Well, the next closest county has had 3 resignations in Eastern Washington in 10 years. We've had, if you count every county elected official, we're looking at about 14. 14 from county clerk, county auditor, county treasurer. That's wrong.
Thank you. Rob?
I appreciate Mr. Tibbs' perspective, and you know, I agree. I am elected to another 4-year term. I promise to serve out that term, simply put. And just to tag on that, Commissioner Bauer didn't step down early.
So with that, we've gone through our questions, and we need to actually wrap up as I promised to get you out of here by 8:30 time. First of all, I want to let you know next week, Tuesday, I would like for you to join us at Eggs and Issue because our topic is going to be
Charter schools.
Charter schools, which has been an ongoing question asked by many of you of our candidates through these past Eggs and Issues. We will actually have candidates from each side of the issues who will talk to you specifically on charter schools, pro or con. That's initiative 1240. So with that, we will now move on to our concluding remarks for our candidates. Each will have 2 minutes to address you and provide a summary of their experiences or whatever points they may want to bring forward for you before you walk out the door. And we actually have elections right around the corner. So Chris, please begin.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming out this early. I know many of us had to come out of bed early just to be here, and I really do appreciate that. I think these forums are a wonderful dialogue so we can have an opportunity to know the issues and know our candidates. I believe that we have to stand forward in Kitsap County and have some change. I think we need change, and that change needs to be a restoration of a 7-day work week in Kitsap County, well, 7 days of service for Kitsap County. I think that we have to step forward and say that until we have a performance audit in Kitsap County, by an independent performance audit, which makes sense. We're talking about other people's money, we need that audit. We're not going to move forward in Kitsap County. I think we have to have a priority of government. We have to say what is relevant and what is not, and we have to let the people make that determination for us. I think that we have to have a customer service plan for Kitsap County. I think each department should say, you know, what can we do to make your life easier? What can we do to make our county's life easier? I think as a business owner, I have a unique perspective on working with the county government. I think as a business owner, I have a unique perspective on working with various business parties and actually turning a revenue, turning profit, going out and working for that money. Because I'll tell you, if I do a bad job in my business, I don't have an income. If I do a bad job in my business, my family doesn't have a home. I think it steps forward and you have to do well to stay above. So I want to be your county commissioner that cares about your issues. I intend to listen to you. I intend to work hard for you. I intend to work to find consensus with the board. And I think we have to do things like stop the lawsuit of the Kitsap Revolver Club. I think we have to do things like look at petitioning the state to remove GMA. I think we have to very, very carefully be careful of what powers and rights we take away from our citizens and give to the majority. And with that, I'm Chris Tibbs. I'm running for Kitsap County Commissioner. We certainly appreciate your vote and your support. Thank you.
Rob?
I would echo the thanks to all of you coming out so early this morning. It again is, and my thanks to the Chamber for hosting these forums. They're an important part of the dialogue and the political process in our community. And just to step back, I think that it's important to know that when it comes to the county's role of supporting small businesses and that diversification, small businesses are where our economy, they are the backbone in how our economy will recover. When you think about the fact that 90% of all Americans work for small businesses, and they equate to 50% of our businesses overall. I'm sorry, switch that around. 50% of Americans work for small businesses, and 90% of businesses qualify as small businesses of 50 employees or less. And I think that's really important to know, that when we talk about how the county can support our local economy, it's about bringing up and supporting each and every one of those small businesses, regardless of what their focus is. Whether it's tourism and they're renting equipment, whether it's looking at agriculture, whether it's looking at light manufacturing, we need to support them all. And again, my priorities are consolidating services with other jurisdictions to achieve economies of scale, continuing to simplify our land use and permitting process, and also wanting to support those small businesses. And I have brought, again, 20 years of experience to the role. It's been my pleasure to serve the community for the past 18 months, and I look for your support to continue as County Commissioner for the next 4 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, audience members.